In the following video, I'm going to evaluate some theoretical concepts of coaching, and I also intend to evaluate a range of techniques used by coaches that they use to enhance their coaching. So effective leadership comes down to loads of things. It's not just about managing the group, but being an effective leader means getting the most out of them and the most out of yourself, seeing them at their best and you at your best. It comes down to the safety element of it, the holistic approach, basically just looking at that big picture and approaching them as human beings and not just objects or items that you need to just get from one point to another or teach something to and send them on the way. You need to be able to give them that depth to be able to go away and keep up with whatever they want to do. One effective safety tool that's used by coaches is CLAP, C-L-A-P. CLAP is an acronym used by coaches in more dynamic environments, just to try and, it's a tool, it's a safety tool, just to keep the whole group together basically. So CLAP stands for, you got C, which is communication, always being able to communicate with your group effectively, not just within earshot, but whether that's via hand signals or being able to actually convey information back and forth, and that needs to be, whether information needs to be passed down the line or whether it needs to just be a one-time instruction just to let them know something. Then you've got line of sight. Always try and maintain, obviously, your group's line of sight. In an open venue, this is no problem, but in a situation like on a river, line of sight can easily be lost. It doesn't necessarily have to be you being able to see everyone, but as long as the chain of line of sight can be seen, just as long, if you can see somebody who can see somebody else, as long as you've got that in play, it at least it allows the communication to be kept as well. It allows the information to be passed back down the line. Avoidance, just being able to anticipate any problems that might come up. So by you having the previous two in play, communication and line of sight, it allows you to use the information to best decide how best to proceed. And then your position, P. Positioning is vital. If you're right at the back, it's going to have problems. If you're right at the front, there's going to be more problems. It's not going to allow you to be in the best position you need to be in to get the most out of you and to be where you need to be. If there's any kind of emergency, you need to be in places where you are at best used. Whatever coaching style a coach adopts or an instructor adopts during a session is just up to them, just down to their judgment of what they think will be best to get the most out of the session. If they are using quite a solid command style on that end of the spectrum, just to just tell the group what to do, that might suit for quite formal scenarios, or if the group are particularly badly behaved and just need to tell them what to do just so that they get the job done, then fair enough. But there should never just be one style used. There needs to be a range of styles used to approach it from different perspectives just to get the most out of it. But it goes right the way from command style, as I mentioned, just telling them what to do. There's no input from them whatsoever, no grey area, that is what is getting done. And then at the other end is self-practice, where it's very much up to them. They do as much or as little as they want. You've given them the input they originally need, and then you've set them off on task that they are going to go and paddle and do whatever they need to do using each other or even just literally on their own just to get that practice in. The problem with these different styles is that they need to be used in appropriate situations when they need to be based on what the group's needs are. The self-learning style would never work with a group of novices. They won't be able to go away. Even if you've given them that initial input, they need the constant input, not just a one-off instruction at the beginning and then sent off on task. They need to be monitored the whole time, basically, and not just left to do it. If they're doing it on their own, they're self-practicing. If it's not purposeful practice and they're not doing something that is going to benefit them because if they're not getting corrected, then they'll quite happily just practice the whole time, and if it's not good, you might come back at the end and tell them, and then obviously the whole session has just been for nothing really. So it's down to judging what the group's needs are and being able to choose an appropriate style to attack that session in particular. A leader's role in the group shouldn't solely be down to trying to impart as much technical knowledge as possible. It should be down to what the group is going to get out of it, and if it's done for these selfish reasons that instructors sometimes do it for, then the whole thing's just sterile. It's not a positive environment to be in. They shouldn't always presume that they know more than the group or that they know what's best for the group, and they need to consider the group's needs and wants from whatever they came to this instructor for. A coach's philosophy is interesting because it's not something that necessarily can be taught. It's based on the experiences and basically the values of what a coach bases himself on. It's not a static belief. These can change over time, but it's what separates his coach from each other basically. Qualifications can all be gained, and theory and coaching styles and all that can be taught and that can be learned, but the philosophies of a coach are all based on their experiences and what they bring different. It's what divides instructors and teachers and everybody apart from each other, but it comes down to the core values of that instructor. I suppose it comes down to whether a coach is selfish or selfless. If they're doing it just to progress themselves, make a name for themselves, make money from it, just get their qualifications, whatever the reason they're doing it, if it's just for themselves, that's great, but there's not going to be that depth of, groups aren't going to want to work with them. They're not going to have the same relationship as someone who was just doing it because it makes them happy. Like, instructors can still be just as qualified, but if the reason they're teaching it or the reason they're doing whatever they're doing is because they found it makes them happy and they are genuinely enthusiastic about passing this information on, the whole situation just seems very more organic. It just allows for everything to flow a lot easier. It comes down to basically what motivates the instructor to do what they do. If it was all very kind of black and white, they'd have these qualifications, deliver this session, and that would be the gains that they get from that session in the group. But it needs to kind of, everybody brings something different to it, and it's wondering why they all do what they do differently. And it's just whether an instructor goes about something more carefully, more caring for the group than others, because I've seen it where instructors don't care about the group at all. They're there to do a job, to keep them safe, and on paper that's great, but there's not as much to be gained from the session for everybody involved. The phrase failure to prepare to fail is quite apt during coaching sessions. If you've not spent any time beforehand taking into account all the factors that could could play a part in your session, then you're going to be in trouble really. You need to take into account the group, like what they expect, what previous experience have they done, what are they going to want to get out of the session. Is it a coaching session, is it a play session? You're going to need to take into account the venue. Is it going to be ideal? All these little things that need to be considered all go into part of your planning, and then will allow you to produce a session that they'll find fulfilling as well as you. And you don't have to work hard then. You just have to kind of stick to your plan, and it works out a lot better. The problem with planning is when people make a plan and stick to it too rigidly. If they've been given information that the group are novices and they turn up and they're all quite advanced paddlers or climbers or whatever it might be, then you're going to need to, you've got to deviate from that original plan. So you could have a contingency plan, or just having that depth of experience behind you, adjust the plan that you've got if you've got that available to you. Just if by sticking to it, it's going to be detrimental to both you and the group. They're not going to get anything out of it, and you're going to end up just capping their possible gains from the day. They're not going to get anything brilliant out of it, so you need to really kind of be flexible with it. By sticking to it too rigidly, it makes the whole thing a negative experience. Demonstrations are potentially an important part of any coaching session. They allow the learners time to view the whole skill demonstrated before they have a go themselves, and then it gives them another way to absorb that information if it wasn't just sinking in by listening to the skill introduced and instructed that way. There are problems with demonstrations, however. If the demonstration isn't done quietly, then it can distract the learners from what needs to be observed. If there's too much being said, then it can distract them from the bits that you want them to focus on, and then they can struggle to understand when it starts and stops. It's important to show them from different viewpoints so that they're getting the whole picture right the way across, so they can see from different angles what's expected for them to have a go. It's also important that they're done in real time rather than slow motion. Slow motion tends to distort the skill, and they don't get a good idea of what is required from them when they do have a go. There are a couple of models for demonstrations, but the one I'm going to talk about now, coping model, is basically just showing them what they need to do, not explaining it in any kind of great detail, showing them what they need to be able to go away, progress quickly, and then you just have a go, get it done before they leave, basically. And it allows them to cope, it allows them to do it, maybe not as effectively as it could be, but to a degree where it can be used. Or you have them observe each other. Once you've given them some input on how to do it, you set them a task, you lead them to it. That's called a learning model, and that allows them to just learn from mistakes. Basically, it's a trial by error technique, and then it moves on to the expert model. But this is for more advanced participants when they're needing that extra input. They're really looking to progress their paddling, or any instruction for that matter. An important technique for any coach to have in his arsenal would be observation. Just knowing the difference between watching somebody do something and observing them then do it is vital to be able to improve their performance. To fully understand, not just see what they're doing, but to fully understand what it is they are doing and where they are going wrong, allows you to then move on to begin to analyse their performance. And this is where you can basically break it down into different chunks that you can then address one area. If it doesn't work, you try another one. And just being able to analyse to a decent degree means that you should be able to improve their performance somehow. After that analysing stage, you need to be able to give good feedback from what you've found out from analysing their performance. By being able to give that good feedback and in enough depth that you'll be able to help them improve, you need to have really observed what's gone on and broken it down into terminology they're going to understand. If you blind them with all kinds of terminology and jargon that they're not going to take in, there's no point. They need to be able to take that away and reflect on that, and then almost be able to put an action plan in place that will allow them to improve, and they can just do it step by step. The machine gun approach when giving feedback is just to kind of say everything that you think of really quick, and it's not effective. You need to think more of the sniper approach, just saying the key bits, even if it's not everything that they need to do, just saying the key bits of information that they are going to use and that they're going to be able to take away and do something with.